Yep. Haven't seen anything yet.
We're live, buddy. We're live. They'll have heard. They'd have had from behind the curtain a little Brad going, "Oh, I haven't seen anything." Welcome to live show number 20. I can't believe we've made it to 20. From behind the curtain, a little Brad going, "Oh, I haven't seen it." And that's an example of the kind of delay we have to deal with. Bradley, how are we?
I'm all right, man. I've got my fire on because it's a bit cold in London right now.
I thought it's absolutely roasted.
Yeah, it's just a decorative fire. I'm just
right. Not kicking out any heat.
No, just for show.
Well, guys. Oh, sorry, Bradley.
Sorry, I've got a bit of a delay. I'm all right. If anyone listened earlier, I was telling tales about my running with Ant-Man and his buddies this week, and just getting totally annihilated in Greenwich Park. So I'm a little bit sore, but hey, I'm on the mend.
Yeah, I'm I'm glad you're not going to tell the ant in your pants story. Although it did allow me to send an excellent tweet about you having literal ants in your pants and me having metaphorical ones about Small Brewers Relief. So, hey, there's a silver lining for you, buddy. Right, so thank you for joining us on what is a very unusual day, which is a Friday. We've only just put our Friday 5 p.m. podcast live, and now we're live talking to you guys. So thank you so much for joining in and for buying, indeed, the boxes, which we see a little kickoff. So you're supporting us by buying that. We've got a really special show tonight. We've got the amazing Brett Ellis, who is the co-founder and head brewer over at Wild Beer Co, joining us in a couple of minutes. So those of you who are lucky enough to get a box have an absolute treat in store. But don't worry, if you haven't got a box, there's lots that you can learn. So do let us know what you're drinking in the comments. Comments over there. Let us know what you're drinking. And if you've got any questions at any point, please do drop them in the comments and we'll try to get to them. If you are worried that you won't have your question read, bing, you can use the super chat function, in which you can give a donation, anything from I think £1 or $1, to £1 million. Hey, go for it.
Guys, Johnny.
And if you do that, we will stop whatever we're doing at the next available opportunity and answer your question there and then. You can, of course, just use it to tip us and say you love us, which some people do, and it makes my heart swell. I'm getting better at asking for money, Brad, aren't I?
Gradually, I need to teach you a bit more about the ways of getting a bargain or getting extorting money.
It's just so fucking awkward. Right, so yeah, guys, in the comments, do let us know what you're drinking. Say hey. Got lots of people saying hello already. Somebody from Florida, that's great. South Africa, Mexico, India, Florida. I think I said Florida. But that's amazing to see. We love it when international people join us. It's always humbling to see that. I hope you're doing okay in Florida. I think it's a bit rough over there at the moment. And in South Africa, I thought booze was banned, or if they lifted that now. I hope they've lifted it again. So I hope you're able to enjoy some beers, or that you had some already. Callum Trimble, no sign of Gordon. He was hoping. Gordon was his delivery driver bringing the wild beers. And he tweeted earlier saying he needs to get his skates on. It's due between 7:15 and 8:15.
Oh,
so I really hope it comes chilled. And I really hope that it comes while we're still live. Slugger says alcohol is banned again in South Africa. I'm sorry. It's fucking shit.
I've got one thing to say about Gordon, which it takes me back to an artist, a musical artist called Jilted John, if anyone knows who he is. He did an amazing pop song called Gordon is a Moron, which is like a sort of punk song. It's fucking great. So go check it out. Whoever was just talking about Gordon. I'm sorry your beers haven't turned up yet. That sucks, man.
He won't be a moron if he gets the beer there in time. Right, so we're going to welcome Brett on in a tiny second. Brad fucked off. I guess he's getting the beers?
I'm getting props.
He's getting props, of course, the all-important props. Brad, do you want the full screen to show off the props you've got?
Props. I think. Well, I could show some props. Seeing as it's Wild Beer Co, I've got a wild friend. I'm gonna It's sort of the same colour as me, actually.
This has got very kids' TV suddenly. What's going on?
So I've got a wild friend there. When something's particularly wild, I might hold that up.
Yeah.
And then when something's amazing, we've got the old amazing sign as always.
Great. I'm at my parents' house right now. I've got props for the first time.
Hey.
Wait.
We can't see you. You need to go back to you.
Oh, of course. Here's me.
Hey, look at that. We've both got wild creatures. Awesome. I used to have a massive collection of taxidermy, which I've got rid of. But I could have had I had like a hawk, an owl, several squirrels, monkjack. No, not a monkjack. A giant ferret. I can't remember what they're called. All sorts of things I had.
Marmot?
No, it's a thing you get it in Wales, in Scotland. Begins with M. I can't remember what it is.
No idea. Let's move on. Let's get Brett on before we go down some bizarre. I don't know what it is journey. So Brett is joining the stream.
Hey, Brett.
How are you doing?
Sorry, I wasn't listening, so I didn't.
You waited patiently for 10 minutes, and then just at the moment you got distracted, we went, "Hey, let's bring Brett on."
Yeah, hang on a sec.
Oh, God.
Look at this.
He's outdone us all.
It's got very sort of
Too big.
stuff. Brilliant. I love it.
Well, this has already taken a very strange turn.
Let's do a screen
I
grab.
feel like hung it up.
Let's get a screen grab of all the animals here. How do we do a screen grab? Hang on. I'm working on it, guys.
I think it's Shift Command 3.
Oh, got it. Make your best pose. I'm about to do screen grab. Are we done?
There we go. Right, okay. Moving on. The owls are not what they seem. Thanks, Ben. Good point. Somebody loving our New England documentary. Thank you. Keep watching it. It's doing well under lockdown. People seem to have more time. So they're watching our hour-long episode.
Yeah, I've been watching it while I'm doing the dishes.
Is that right?
Yeah, just watch it in like 15-minute increments.
I was going to say, we must have a lot of dishes, but yeah, 15-minute increments.
Yeah.
What will we do during lockdown? Have you got to the karaoke scene yet?
No, I don't know. If I did, I forgot it.
Nobody drops of Jupiter, I tell you. There wasn't a dry eye in the house, was there, Brad?
Oh no, I mean certainly not mine. I might have been very, very drunk, but Johnny's voice, the pipes were calling that night.
Super. Okay, so let's get stuck into the first beer. I did flash up the drinking order, and then I found a duck, so things got railroaded. But we're going to be starting with Fruit Butter, which is this beauty.
Yeah.
I had fun trying to pick out the order. You don't do low ABV beer in this box.
No. Oh, well, that's all right though. I mean, I guess if you're pounding all of them by yourself, then yeah, that would be an issue. But yeah.
Yeah, let us know in the comments. Are you sharing, or are you a little bit scared about what's about
Where's Fruit Butter? Here it is.
Wow,
that's a color.
Yeah.
Before we dive into the beer, though, Brett, give us a quick backstory of where Wild Beer came from in 2012.
2012. Yeah. 2012, and actually one of the beers we have in the box was brewed in 2012. But in 2012, Andrew Cooper and I, we were working at another brewery in Bristol and decided we really wanted to venture out and do our own thing. Saw that the craft beer movement was moving along, getting pretty exciting in England and Britain, and really just saw an opportunity for us to follow our curiosity on making wild and sour beer, barrel aged, but also the American hoppy styles of beer as well. They were very new. Colonel was around. I think there was only Colonel was the only small brewery that was just strictly in keg. So like the keg market was basically non-existent at that point. And we set out to do hoppy sour beer and no cask. We didn't do any cask for the first year back in 2012, which was pretty crazy. But we set out to try to pursue beer differently, and we knew it would taste good. Well, we didn't know that I could make it perfectly straight off, but we knew that those beer styles were out there to be perfected and offered, and we knew that people would accept them just because they accept them all over the world, because they taste great. As pretty much all beer styles taste great, it's just got to be the right opportunity, the right place to drink them.
So yeah, you came out the gate with modus operandi, the Flemish Red, pretty early. What was it about Flemish Red that you love so much? Ooh.
Yeah, but also just say, like, I'll just keep rambling on. So if you put that screen on me on my own, like, you need to like get in there and actually seeing you guys, just seeing you guys is pretty good. I can see your reactions and I talking and stuff, you know. So no bad thing. Hey, what's going on? That's awesome. I need to get a beer.
Oh, that was so good, Brad.
that was epic, Brad. Thank you.
Looking in the mirror.
It's my repertoire. I just had to find some glasses that were the same.
That's good. That is good. Man after my own heart. So also just wanted to say thank you to everybody in Facebook on our website, our Facebook, joining in, as well as thank you to Johnny and Brad just at the start of this. Thanks for having us on and letting us show you our wares and talk us through stories and flavors. Cheers.
Cheers.
We have I have in the room with me tonight on the other side of the computer Sam Shrimpton, who's the head brewer here at the Wild Beer Co. And also he's in the Wild Beer chat as Sam Shrimpton, chatting and answering questions from any technical stuff on the Facebook side of things. Sorry. I just thought I'd say that for those guys. As just if I reference someone who's on the other side of the screen, that's who I'm handing him a beer or something.
The old ego that sits somewhere over there.
Yeah.
Right. So tell us about Fruit Booter.
So, kind of the technical sides of Fruit Booter are it is a 5-ish%, 5.1, I think, pink peppercorn saison. It's brewed like that in the kettle and the mash tun and all that stuff. So it's got wheat. It's has lager malt, wheat, and I think that's it actually. Then pink peppercorns in the boil along with sads, and it used to have Dana hops, which is kind of like a strong version of sads, really kind of spicy, herbal. And then, but it's evolved. But now it's fermented in stainless on top of the second use raspberries. So it's the beer that it's always like in a rotation. How do I start off the description of this? He's just going to turn down the volume on his laptop. Sorry, we're going to get a loop here in a second. How do I start this off? I'll start it off how we make it, because it's for the wild or sour brewers out there, they'll probably instinctively grasp it. But I wish I had like a white suit and like a board with a diagram, and I could show you how it all works.
Right on the barrel.
Yeah. So we start out in one of the barrels, which is actually in a big fooder. So it's a 7,000 liter fooder, where the beer is maturing, and that beer is slightly pink because it's slightly pink because it has second use raspberries in it. But when the time comes to do to bottle a new batch of Fruit Booter, we'll take 5,000 liters out of that fooder into a stainless tank, add in just about a ton of raspberry crumb. And this is frozen raspberry pieces. So it's important to get the seeds and the skin of the raspberry, but they are frozen. And then that sits with the foeder beer in the stainless tank for 2 weeks ish until the flavor's right, basically. At which point we will bottle it. And then in the stainless tank, we've got all this raspberry pulp, this mushy raspberry stuff mixed with beer that still tastes of raspberry. And so what we do is we brew that fresh pink peppercorn saison directly onto that raspberry pulp.
Right.
So that's what that second use raspberries is. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So when that's done fermenting after and chilled and kind of chill it down after fermenting, it's now slightly pink. It has a pink hue and raspberry tint of flavor. And we transfer that into the foeder to top it back up.
Right. So it's almost Solera kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, if you remember that the foeder's 7,000 liters and we only took 5,000 out. So when we brew a fresh batch, it's going into the old batch. Does that make sense?
I lost connection for a second there, but Brad could tell you if it made sense.
Basically, that is a Solera, isn't it? It's it's like the mother that's staying in there, and it's building, building, and building.
Yeah. So, and sorry,
go on.
No, I was just going to talk about more of the technical stuff, which is kind of boring. But why make a raspberry beer? Why make a sour raspberry beer? I haven't even tried it. I need to drink it.
But like really, considering it's second use raspberries, it's really jammy. And then that lovely proper pepper kick at the finish.
Well, no. So this has got second use and first use.
And first use. Sorry, yeah, because
yeah. So it's a way to like try to get more out of the raspberry. Try not to be like, because you can't. We don't like press that raspberry pulp afterwards, so it's quite high lot wastage. So actually, this is a way to like get more out of it and be more not economical, resourceful.
Yeah.
But raspberry is one of those beers that when you eat a raspberry, especially if it's a hedgerow raspberry, you expect this kind of earthy, kind of tart character. It's not going to be a store pungent, like real sweet, juicy raspberry usually. From a hedgerow, it's that real authentic raspberry character. And so you expect that level of sourness. And so raspberry in a beer that's really sweet almost doesn't line up with what we know of raspberry. And so sour beers are perfect for fruit beer because fruit always has acid in it. And so you're expecting that acid hit with the fruit flavor. And if that doesn't line up properly, you're going to associate it with candy or dessert, not with the real fruit.
Yeah, I mean, I've had lots of sort of raspberry pale ales and stuff in my time that have never quite hit the mark, and you've never quite understood why. And I think it is because you miss that tart character that's so much a part of raspberry, and yeah, even that earthiness as well. So,
yeah, this one is just it's always been a house favorite. The guys or the team who don't drink too much beer in our team, they drink just proper cider from down around here. They'll get at our staff parties and things, they'll get a pint of cider, well, a nearly pint, and then top it off with fruit beer to
some kind of mad top in their cider.
Yeah, fruit beer top. Yeah, and they call that the bread Ellis, because I was on the bartender at one party, and I just kept anybody who asked for cider, I'd give them that instead, and so they just called it that.
Is that I call it a Brett bite, like a snake bite.
Brett bite.
A Brett bite.
So is I'm interested by cider's obviously a big thing down in Somerset. You've got people who are still sort of hardcore cider drinkers, not beer lovers that work at your brewery. It's that sort of tribe.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the wild beers connect with. Dan Holly is in the Facebook chat. He's one of them. And I think they're hardcore cider drinkers, yeah, but why wouldn't you be? I mean, proper Somerset cider is something to be amazed about. It's natural fermentation and or go down the Keeving route and real artisanal is something that we're inspired by. And we use a lot of apple pumice and cider yeast from local cider makers. So kind of being a bit drink agnostic, I guess, on that one. But
you've used sort of the yeast from the apple production and the orchards a fair bit in brewing as well, right?
Yeah. Tonight on the beers we're drinking tonight, we didn't. Yes, we did on Circadian. That one. We could talk about that on Circadian. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Otherwise, I'm going to talk about Circadian now, and that's not going to work.
No, that wouldn't be ideal. We'll keep them hanging.
Yeah.
Let's dive in and see if we've had any questions we can address.
There was a good bit of knowledge there from Sam Shrimpton, your head brewer. Just said,
"Oh yeah,
there is nothing left of the raspberry but the seeds at the time when we empty the blend tank."
Yeah.
It just all kind of melts down, does it, and gets amazing, and
it just disintegrates. Yeah. It just really pulps up and becomes part of the sediment that you get in your bottle. And so getting that sediment into your glass as well is like, it's not just yeast or bacteria, it's also actual raspberry.
So it's good for you. It's one of your 5 a day.
I'd like to say so.
If you drink enough of it, maybe.
I think the alcohol might offset any health benefit you're getting from the small amount of raspberry.
I think if you put it into a cider, maybe it will be. Because you got apple on raspberry.
Yeah. Yeah, we know.
Yeah, it's kind of, in the beer, it's a bit more like toast with raspberry on top, jam on top, because it's grainy.
Nice.
Agree.
I don't know.
We've got a question from David Tiller, but it's actually a good question for when we get onto the modus. So, David, I'm going to save that question till then and come back for you. Have we got any questions around Fruit Booter? I'd love to know how many of you are drinking it. We've got 111 people watching. How many cases did we sell? Around?
I really don't know. I don't know. I forgot to check.
We were at 63 on Monday. I remember that.
Okay. I have a feeling Dan or Scott in the Facebook chat might chime in. They might say they both work in the wild beer fulfillment team.
Right, fulfillment. I like that term. Sam brought another good comment live. We're not allowed to talk about the health benefits of beer, but yes. So yes, it is healthy. Said no one.
Said nobody. Yeah, I think Charlie Bamforth. I still haven't read the book. I think it's Grape versus Grain or something like that, and he goes in depth about the health benefits of beer in that. I remember there would be a YouTube, almost like an hour long seminar that he did for Google or something about that. It was a book review type book launch, and he talks quite a bit about it. It's really good chat that he talks about the health benefits of beer versus, and he goes into versing other drinks. Yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Somebody's asking. Oh no, I clicked on the wrong one. That's a good question. Don't the whole team work in customer fulfillment? That's a nice.
They do. Yeah.
Comment.
We talk about logistics team, but anyways.
Got a super technical question for you. What do you ferment at, and what's the OG and FG? Come on, Brett, off the top of your head.
Oh, balls. I don't know the OG and FG. I'm gonna have to guess it's around 40, and -1. It's gonna be around there. Fermentat. So over the years, it's evolved. So we playing around with the different yeast that we use for it, and right now we are on a blend of red wine yeast and Belgian ale yeast, and that that we ferment. We start at around 20 to 22, and it goes up to about 26 in that region. It's a pretty fast and hungry yeast. And in the past, though, we used a French Saison yeast that was a diastaticus yeast that is notorious for over fermenting lots of things. And that yeast, we used to start at around 24 and go up to like 29 degrees C.
And it just chomped away.
Yeah. It was very hot ferment. And Sam, were you saying yes to the OG? Oh, Sam's just checking out the technical bits for me on the starting and finishing.
Is Daniel Holly one of your gang?
Sorry, I meant Dan. It was Sam.
Is Dan one of your gang, Daniel Holly?
He is, yeah.
He reckons you've sold 400 cases. He says many cases think it was 3 to 4 pallets, which is 400 cases.
Yeah.
Whoa, that's amazing if you did. Awesome.
Crap.
I didn't hear about that. I forgot to. We usually have a meeting on Friday morning that I was not a part of this morning, and I would have. I forgot to ask.
It's all good. Don't worry. We've got a question from Andy Topham. Do they use different fooders for each beer, or are you putting stuff across to try and create threads between beers?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a really good question. So we have 5 fooders, and we use all 5 of them slightly. We've kind of settled into somewhat of a routine with them. James Bargett. Sorry, I stumbled on his name. He's our barrel wrangler. So Sam, I've just noticed, said that OG was 37 starting gravity or original gravity. But we look at we do use different fooders for different beers. How do I say this? It's not exactly different beers, but different organisms. So we have one foeder that is used primarily for beers that have started its life out as a cool ship, or as a fermenter for cool ship stuff, or a blending tank for cool ship stuff. So we don't really want. We try not. The reason for, and then another tank is used for modus operandi. Foeder, sorry, not tank, is used for modus operandi. But we are really careful not to put any barrels that taste of acetic acid or acetobacter, which is more of a vinegary note, into that tank. We leave those barrels on their own, and when we blend modus, we'll get into this later. I'll get into that later. And then let's see. Fruit Booter is only in one tank, and we've got another tank I think is a little bit more miscellaneous.
So you're trying to keep those bacteria separate. So you don't want acetic in something where you wouldn't want acetic in another beer. You wouldn't put cool ship stuff in the same as something else, because cool ship's all about those wild yeast that you're getting from that particular character. So you try and keep the threads separate where they need to be and combine them where they can. Yeah,
and it's not exactly perfect. Like if there's a beer we've made that's very similar to modus operandi, the flavor profile from the yeast and bacteria is similar. Maybe the malt is different, that's okay, or the hops are different, that's okay. But the bacteria and the yeast is very similar, then we would use that foeder if we needed to.
What about, I think a great question perhaps for people who are fairly new to wild beer would be what from a flavor perspective is different about using a foeder and a barrel? Why do we sometimes use these great big barrels instead of these lots of little small ones?
Sorry, I'm eating some cheese.
We'll get to the cheese in a bit as well. We have to reference the fact that you work next to a cheese factory.
I'm pretty disappointed I didn't send you guys some cheese. I'm sorry about that. I didn't think about it.
Yeah, right. So I'm just pleased I got the first half.
Yeah, that's really good. I don't know how that happened.
The couriers broke my bottles and then decided not to tell anyone. So Giles jumped in a car and brought it over like a hero.
Yeah. Sorry, I digressed with the cheese and then the beers. So what did you say?
V barrels.
Foeders V barrels. So Originally, it was so barrels are 200 liters right behind us. Foeders are larger, generally 500 to thousands, tens of thousands of liters, huge. And you get. So I'm trying to think of like what. There's all sorts of reasons you would use either one. I'm trying to ping up. Let me just go through maybe for a few. On an oak barrel, you'll generally get more. You can get more oxygen pickup as there's more in contact, and the same thing, you'll get more oak character from a barrel because there's more oak in contact with the beer, like surface area to liter ratio. And for that same principle of flavor transference, you'll also get oxygen going through the oak barrel as well, and you have more oxygen porous area to pick up oxygen. But on a foeder, it's usually got a flat top, and so that can be, if you're intentional or unintentional, you might leave that flat top completely like not filled all the way. So that could be a huge surface area for oxygen. And often foeders are kind of tilted on their side and with a bung towards the back. How do I do that? Like that. So it's actually filled up along the top of the foeder. So you get a very minimal oxygen head space. That it depends on the design of the foeder. But I think for our size brewery and our size of blends, barrels are amazing because making sour and wild beer, you have a great opportunity to develop complexity and flavor by blending. And if you use a foeder, that's generally just one batch that you're gonna, like fruit booter. Fruit booter is a batch beer. We brew it, we put it in a foeder, then we add raspberries to it, and we put it in a bottle. So it's just one batch. If it fermented well or badly, we kind of got to live with it or throw it away. But with barrels, you'll do one batch of beer and split it across 12 oak barrels, and 3 of those oak barrels might be singing like amazing and maybe big bourbon, vanilla, oaky characters and tannic red wine notes from like goes into the bourbon modus operandi conversation, and then but you've got this one batch of beer has now created this multitude of flavors. So barrels are amazing for blending. Foeders are amazing for batch brewing or blending. That would be
on a question. We've had 2 people ask why you're more likely to get a sour in a bottle than a can.
Probably so many things just went through my mind. Probably because, like, for us, I'll answer for us. We put our bottling line is really easy to clean. It's a lot smaller than our canning line, a lot less moving parts, and it has been tried and tested so that we can put a sour wild beer. If that person who's asked it maybe didn't know this, I'm not sure. Is kind of like is really it can contaminate other beers in the same way. It's kind of like having raw chicken in your kitchen. You don't want to like cut up your raw chicken, put it in the oven, and then cut up your salad on the same chopping board, because you're going to contaminate your salad with bacteria and you'll get sick most likely, or possibly. And the same thing with sour beer. You need to really make sure that you clean that chopping board or that bottling line really well so that you don't contaminate the clean beer that follows it. And canning lines are a little bit more complex in usually where all the beer is fine, but in the seam of the can, I don't have any cans with me, but the seam around the lid is like a pretty complex bit of kit that doesn't get cleaned in the same way as all like a bottling line does. So for us, we don't do it in can because of that reason, but that's kind of we wish we could. We really, really wish we could.
Is there a slight danger with canned wild beer as well, that if there's going to be some more fermentation happening, if the Brett's still kind of kicking off, the Brettanomyces, one of the wild yeast, it could go boom, or
could go boom.
Carbonate and be a bit.
Yeah. I am of the school of thought that like you can have the same problem with bottles, but bottles will just be glass shards going everywhere, and a can, well, at least cans are designed to have to bulge out the top or the bottom, and then the seam is designed to be weakest, and so that it pops open the seam, and then you also don't get aluminium shards everywhere.
Cool. Okay, we're going to move on to Modus, but before we do, I've got a question that might derail us. So I'm hesitant to show it.
I'll keep it quick,
but I'm going to.
Oh man.
I think that question should go to Brad as well.
I mean, I've got a load of hats on the sofa that I could run through.
Put them all on.
Save Brett. While you're talking,
I'm gonna guess I got 30. I'm done.
30 hats.
Oh, you're done. Okay.
20 hats, 20 to 30. I don't know.
I've got two. That's it.
I like that one.
These are just fedoras.
Yeah, I like the fedora. It's a nice one.
This one's a Stetson, actually. There you go.
Yeah.
That was a bit wizard-esque.
That was a little bit. It's kind of a bit wizardy. I got Seattle years ago. This one's a hunting hat.
Ooh, I like that one.
That's a good one.
And then this is a Brett special.
Yeah, that's my favorite one.
And I put I'm gonna put these guys on. There you go.
Yeah.
Separated a birth, right?
Oh dear.
Brilliant.
Right. Okay. Let's crack Modus. So start by telling us about Modus as we get this in the glass. Why Flemish red right at the beginning?
Why Flanders red at the beginning? I don't know. Why any? I don't know. Why? Because it's a great beer. No, I'll make up some reasons that make it sound really wise or whatever. But this is all in retrospect. I think, Andrew and I are really we love flavor, we love food, and a beer that is perfect for a dinner, perfect to be paired with food. That Flanders Red was one that the sweet caramel, toffee, prune, raisins mixed with the balsamic vinegar notes, mixed with cherry character and any Brettanomyces kind of funky notes. These are all things that work amazing with food, and you don't quite get that with just a standard with say the beers we're going to have today, the other one, Fruit Booter, or the other beers. This one is one that could replace red wine table. So that was a big reason. But also it was a beer that I was making at homebrew wise. Just I would take some English old ale from the brewery we were working at from appropriately. I wouldn't steal it, but and then I'd pitch in Brettanomyces and put in some oak chips and kind of develop this recipe, this fermentation and yeast and bacteria, and just fell in love with making that beer. And I was really inspired by three beers. One was Gale's Prize Old Ale. Are you guys familiar with that?
Yeah, Fuller's own it now, don't they?
Yeah, Fuller's bought Gale's.
I got a tank of it.
I got a tank of it. Yeah. We were on the cusp of doing a collaboration with them, but a number of more just like financial things came up and stopped the collaboration, because it was quite a big collaboration that we were doing, and it was just a bit too big, and there's too many unknowns, and we couldn't price the beer for 2 years out, and we needed to age for 2 years, and it was just too big of a project. And then we got back. Anyways, I'm digressing. I'm going to stop. So Gale's Prize Old Ale was an English old ale with a famous Brettanomyces infection that tasted of cherries to me. And then there was Rodenbach Grand Cru. This is like tart, kind of this more the balsamic vinegar type character with the sweet malt background. And then another beer was Jolly Pumpkin La Roja, which is more the older way they used to make it, which was very oaky. It's not quite made the same way anymore, I don't believe. They used to make it exclusively in La Roja barrels. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. Red wine barrels from Spain. Is that right, Sam? From Spain. So in those three beers, you kind of got this Brettanomyces cherry funk from the Prize Old Ale. You got the New World sour beer blending from the Jolly Pumpkin that had a big oak character, red wine oak character to it, and then you also had that balsamic note from the
Rodenbach.
Rodenbach, that one. Sorry, and so those three components, I was trying to like marry those three components together in this beer, which neither of those beers had all three. So in modus operandi, we set out to discover what this beer could be as the years went on. And with wild and sour barrel aged beers, you really got to do that as a startup brewery. You've got to set out to discover what flavors you can create. Unlike if you set out to be the best IPA brewery.
Yeah, you find out a month later.
Yeah. Like, yes, there is still a sense of discovery and learning your equipment and developing your style and all those things. Yes, but definitely a bit different in the sense of a wild brewer and setting out to make the world's best lager. You know, I set this up to brew this lager. I set this up to discover the way sour beer tastes in Somerset. You know, very different. So in modus operandi, we brew an English old ale to about 6.5% alcohol, and then put it into red wine and bourbon barrels, and add in Brettanomyces at that stage. And then over the course of 18 months or so, some of the the red wine barrels will begin to sour from the bacteria. From bacteria that's in the barrels, and then usually the second or third use barrels begin to sour over the generations, and then the bourbon begins to take on this cherry vanilla character from the Brettanomyces and the oak from the bourbon, and it's just bringing all that together, that like tartness and tannic red wine and vanilla and cherry notes. That's where blending happens. So this beer is definitely not a batch beer. This is, you brew a batch, you put it into oak barrels. A couple months later, you brew another batch, you put it into a different set of oak barrels, and you do that again and again. And every bottle of modus operandi usually has around 4 to 6 different batches of beer spread across 12 to 30 oak barrels.
Wow.
And that's how you get the depth and breadth and length of flavor.
And how do you come? So you've got so many barrels involved. How does that look on a blending day? Are you blending with a whole team of people? So out those different barrels.
And so that's also part of the learning thing. It's just learning how different people taste and letting them blend stuff. And when someone says it's really sour, it might not be really sour to you. So you kind of, your team there is really important. This particular blend was done in 2015. Quite a while ago. It was 33 oak barrels. 12 of which were bourbon, 21 of which were red wine. And there's not really any leader in that blending session. We at that time, what we used to do is we'd get about 50 samples of one sample was for each barrel, and we would take a glass, take a sip, pass it to the next person, and it was kind of done in silence, basically. Everybody would write notes. This is definitely pre-COVID time where we would be sharing all our glasses, and we sometimes it's loud and chatty, and we're talking about the beers, but other times it's quite silent and methodical. Really paying attention to what we're tasting and writing it down, and writing down all the notes, and then everybody kind of comes up. If you're feeling a blend, then you just kind of star all the barrels that you want to blend, and on your sheet, and we use a syringe, just a 10 ml syringe, and just kind of go into the glass and like take 10 mils out, put it into a new glass, take 10 mils out of the next barrel that you want to take, or glass that represents the barrel, put it into the blend, and you kind of do a little mini blend that way. Mm-hmm. And then we all just kind of judge it against old blends of Modus.
I find it so fascinating, that process, because you come together and you make this blend and you use those barrels to make that blend, and a little part of me can't help but wonder about all the different blends and different flavors and different beers that could have come out of it that will never exist. It's like, I don't know, it's like creation but also murder of hundreds of other beers that could have been. It's a weird thing.
Well, it's not really murder. They will see their day. They will see their day. They see their day in the next blend, or the next. So sometimes they're just flat, or they're too spiky, they're too crazy, and they need to be saved for another blend. So
we've got a question from Chris Stoneham. Who says, how's the aging changed it from a young Modus? So this is nearly 5 years in the bottle, 4 or 5 years in the bottle, and years before that in barrel. What happened to this beer in particular? We know the processes of aging of the beer generally gets darker. You get oxidative qualities such as you can get cardboard and paper, but you can get sherry and lovely sort of almost brandy-esque notes. What's happening to this one?
So this one, I think you get. Let me taste it again, because I've got a story on that that's more not really flavor-wise, but carbonation-wise.
Yeah, I mean the body does change as well. Carbonation and seems to always get thinner as it ages.
So on these beers, on sour beers that are aged, they've got a whole different lifespan to imperial stouts and barley wines. Very different lifespan, and that I believe is just down to that souring, that we're using a wild fermentation, a bacteria fermentation specifically to really sticky toffee pudding, dates, raisins. Oh man, you just wait, Ben, for the raconteur that you'll try either tonight or some other time. That one is like prunes and strawberries. It's crazy. But on making sour beer and aging it, when you sour a beer intentionally, or it tastes good, whether it's unintentionally, it's important. I've really found that you are preserving that beer, and you're ruining it to some degree, some people would say. But if you're maturing your English old ale and it goes slightly sour, you're not going to win a beer judging competition for an English old ale, but that beer is now going to taste really good for 5-10 more years, because that bacteria has now created an acidic environment, and the Brettanomyces that's in it is going to be continuing to lap up oxygen throughout that life. And I don't know how the acid plays into play with the oxygen, but it never seems to go as papery and as cardboardy as a beer that doesn't have acid. a wild fermentation, a bacteria fermentation.
To go very cardboardy, and maybe if you won't be as hopped because it's sour ale.
Yeah, hopefully that kind of answers it a little bit.
Right, did you say this is good? You think this is good for 10 years? This beer?
I think so.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't. We're only 8 years old, and the blends that we were doing at the beginning weren't nearly as wild, I guess. In the first 2 years. So, and I know that this is 5 years in the bottle. So. And I don't really taste that it's changed all that much. It's not gone from, not gone crazy good or crazy bad or really leathery or really raisiny. It's not. I gotta also be honest. I don't remember this exact blend when
it was a while ago.
It was a little while ago, and we do about at least 3 blends of Modus a year. So yeah, so it's a good little chunk ago.
Amazing. Someone was talking about doing a vertical tasting like Orval with different years. I think that'd be amazing to do it with this.
Do you ever sit down with the brewery and do that, like with different beers, to see how they're progressing?
I've got actually, we've got that lined up in our cold store with Ninkasi. That we've got probably 5 cases of Ninkasi, 6 bottles in each. Each bottle is a different batch, because Ninkasi is a batch beer. There's one brew, and we've got probably 6 cases in there that we need to do that vertical tasting. And
it's a strong beer to go through all those ages.
Yeah, well, what I was gonna do, what I keep meaning to do, is just get like a really long butcher's paper, and here at the brewery we've got like a really long like really long table for in our canteen area, and I was just gonna put the string of those Ninkasis all the way down the middle with permanent marker writing what the dates were or the batches, and then people could they could taste 5 of them, if they want.
Right. So and between lots of different,
but with the aim to you can't taste one that somebody else has tried, so we could taste all of them and get some notes on all of them, and I thought that'd be kind of cool, and we could do that just during the whole day, like just take a little sip.
And one in the morning, quick shot at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
Big day in a brewery.
Do it as like a banquet, maybe with the cheese guys next to you, and we'll come down and film it. It sounds amazing.
That sounds really good. Hopefully it tastes good.
Here, everyone's just fighting over the most recent batches.
Yeah.
Somebody's asked, it's quite a techie question, so beware of that, but what do you do with water chemistry for sours?
Ooh, the cop-out answer is it depends. There's no one answer for sours, I would say. This particular beer, we look to treat it, we kind of Burtonize it and make sure there's a fairly good level of kind of just standard salt in there as well, for some kind of more savory character to it, but also so that there's that like kind of bitterness, gypsum note that you would get in Burton, kind of a traditional English old ale that you'd get. So I want to start out. So this beer starts out in that tradition. So I want to try to emulate that water style, where with, to be honest, water, that's the deep. As deep as I'm going to go on that question, because water chemistry, I am really rubbish at. I got to defer to our suppliers for help, or for Sam. That's why Sam's here, because I know my limitations.
He's the water boy.
Can't handle it all.
Everybody is up for a Ninkasi either tasting box or coming to the brewery for that cheese and apple triple feast that you've interesting question from Ben Filmbusters. The bottle says best before November 2019, but you're saying it's good for another 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I didn't know it says that.
So when you put those dates on, you're sort of estimating that's what you're pretty confident it will be good for, but it could be much longer.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think Modus was definitely back then was around 3 years for sure. We were confident it was going to be good for 3 years. It might still be 3 years. No, we must have upped it because we know it's good for at least 5 now. But we don't really open it up. I don't think I have ever opened up a Modus and gone, oh, that's a bit gone. Like it's kind of hard to do that with slow made, blended, wild, not just blended, but slowly made, authentic, like live sour beers. I don't know if you guys had that many sour beers that have just kind of maybe gone past their prime, but they're still good. They're still,
particularly the ones that don't have fruit in. It's very rare to see them tail off and go kind of bad. I think sometimes you can have a fruited beer. I've had some particularly well-aged lambics of 10 to 15 years where the fruitiness has become, particularly I think raspberry seems a bit more delicate, a bit more likely to just kind of go, I don't know, kind of pasty and flabby and
right.
not as gorgeously jammy as they would have been fresh.
Yeah.
But generally, I mean, cherry beers, I've never had one that wasn't delicious, that was aged. I think, because it's still living, it's still fermenting, it's still it's this little atmosphere where everything's still going on. Sometimes they won't be perfect, but they'll still be delicious. Whereas imperial stouts can really go bad if you age too long.
Barley wines as well. They just kind of
I don't really get why you'd ever age a barley wine because, I mean, maybe a little bit of sherry note is quite nice, but I just like that stupid sticky caramel just railroaded with a load of American hops. Like that's the joy of it for me. So
that kind of barley wine, like, man, Bigfoot is awesome. That's such a good beer. That American barley wine is beautiful.
Somebody's asking what cheese you guys are eating.
So that's Westcombe cheddar.
I'm eating a lump.
What have you got? You just got like Tesco value.
So you were talking about cheddar, so I was like, all I've got is 5 extra mature cheddar.
At least you've got extra mature, mate.
With a jazz apple as well.
Yeah.
Fucking love a jazz apple. What can I say?
I just wish I could like pull out my unicycle or something, and then just see you pull out your unicycle. It's like everything I'm doing, you're just gonna like do another one. They're just like, I like
one-upmanship.
Tell me about Westcombe Dairy because they're on the same lot as you guys, right?
Yeah. So they are actually our landlords, and a lot of people ask, why did we set up a brewery here? And here being in the middle of Somerset, a very small village called Westcombe, and it very small in the middle of nowhere, really. Near Glastonbury, where Blackthorn is made, not brewed, made as well. And lots of cider orchards and sheep and cows. But Westcombe Dairy, we visited the site. Andrew visited the site first and was like, Brett, you got to come see this place. This is great. It used to be a jam and our space used to be a jam and pickle chutney factory area. So, and the dairy, they use big steam boiler and good effluent practices and all that kind of stuff. There's lots of infrastructure already in place. But beside all that, it was no industrial park or railway arch, Like this is a place that has purpose and heritage, and it's connected to the land. And you got to drive through many fields just to get here. The dairy also, as a neighbor, they are a food producer that looks to increase their business by going deeper into the tradition of their craft, by increasing the quality of their product, by increasing the flavor and the depth of it and the integrity of it, not just how do I make more of it, how do I get it to more people necessarily, just they're not looking to industrialize it, they're looking to enrich it and add more and more value, not strip the value out as they grow. And so they were someone we looked up to, and you think of it all those things. And when they seek out quality in their cheese, and it inspires us to seek out quality in our beer. But they've been around on the dairy around here for generation or so. And they make one of 3 slow food recognized artisan cheddars, and these exact parameters someone could correct me on, but it's to this extent. It is made from milk from either their own herd or from within a few miles of their farm. So you can't become ginormous cheesemaker just because it's got to be within a few miles. And it's got to be unpasteurized. It's got to be a traditional 25 kilo truckle or wheel of cheese. It's got to be cloth bound, wrapped in lard. It's got to be aged for 12 months to 2 years. What else? Just those for right now. That's all I got. But
yes,
you know, they just look at
small artisan, not mechanized kind of processes.
Yeah, although they do have an automatic cheese turning robot called Tina the Turner.
Oh, so if you name it right, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly. Because it picks up the cheese and turns it and puts it back and moves it. And it's aged in a cave. They've dug a cave and aged it, and they age it in there, and it's beautiful. You guys got to come out. We do a cheese and beer festival every year where it's just their cheese and our beer. And I
was going to say I've been, but I haven't been to the beer and cheese festival.
It's this robot in a cave is making me think of the classic sci-fi film Logan's Run, where at one point there is a robot which is chasing after these people and is trying to freeze them into an ice block in a cave, I believe. So is it a menacing robot? Is it just like one of those arms, like a beautiful robotic arm?
It's kind of menacing. If all this CE marking wasn't guarding wasn't on it, there's all these safety measures in place that would maybe be a bit menacing. Yeah, we could definitely get some lights and some smoke and stuff like that, some dry ice. That would make it menacing, definitely.
Lovely.
Just something else unique about this batch of Modus was when someone asked about how it aged. This particular batch, we did a large blend on this one. It was 6,100 liters on this blend. And we filled 5 pallets of beer full. And the beer was already carbonated in tank at this stage. And when we bottled it, but at the end of the whole bottling session, we realized that the last two pallets were completely flat, and there was no more sugar to be eaten, so the beer did not carbonate. And so we had the first 3 pallets that were carbonated, and the next 3 were completely flat. And that was because we ran out of CO2 that was going onto the tank, and it created a vacuum, and that vacuum actually sucked all the CO2 out of the beer while we were packaging. It was pretty crazy. So we were left with 200 cases of modus operandi that were completely flat. And what we did, we kind of stuck our head in the sand for a number of months and just forgot about it. And just like we had other fish to fry, for a little while. But then kind of started making some frozen beer and came up with a concept of doing iced modus. And all but 1 pallet was used. We actually emptied out all the bottles of the flat modus into an IBC, a big 1,000 liter plastic tank, and then filled them back up with fresh modus operandi. But we froze that beer and ice distilled it into a beautiful beer called iced modus. And this particular beer that you're drinking was a forgotten pallet that got lost in our warehouse. And over all these 5 years, it carbonated. So as a question of how does this beer aged over the years, it carbonated.
Wow.
There's a crazy journey of industrial issues and losing a whole pallet of beer and not knowing it.
The only thing I was going to say about this beer that, to my memory of fresh modus has changed is it feels a little bit less sweet, which I think is also pronounced a little bit of the oakiness, which makes me, if it didn't have, you had to find those sugars over a couple of years, like slowly break down those long chain sugars. Yeah, there must be zero sweetness left, and it is lovely. Yeah.
We're pretty. I don't put my hat off to ourselves very many times, but definitely when it comes to resourcefulness, when things go wrong, to make something that we're proud of at the end of it as well, not want to hide about, or just proud of, meaning we'll tell you the story of the cock ups that we've done to get to where we are.
Oh, sorry, Brad.
No, I was just going to say you can play a lot more with wild beers. It's not like a lager where it's fucked if you've done something wrong. But it's not necessarily something wrong that you've done. It's just you're exploring a different avenue.
Yeah.
And time and whatever the conditions might be, it's all kind of interesting stuff, and it's all a bit of an experiment, isn't it? It's nature.
Yeah, experimenting with nature, out in nature.
With robots.
With a robot. Jeffrey Grove asked, I've got a barrel-aged sour which costs quite a bit. I'm not sure if I should store it in the fridge or on the shelf. Where should you store your sours before you drink them?
Ooh. I would, probably one of the most important things is to store it in a place where the temperature is not going to go up and down a lot. It's not going to fluctuate. Maybe with the seasons it would be fine to fluctuate, but as an extreme, I wouldn't store it in a windowsill where in the summer during the day it will get really hot and then in the evening it'll cool down. That'll be the extreme. But if you have it, say, just because not everybody has a wine cellar at the right temperature, I don't. In the ideal world, put it in like 10 degrees C until you want to drink it, and maybe chill it down if that's how you like to taste it beforehand. But if you could stick it in the back of some sort of cool larder type thing, it'll fluctuate with the seasons of the year, but it's not going to be like that windowsill.
Absolutely. There's often when people are asked, cicerones and stuff, they quite often say, you should store the beer at the temperature at which you like to drink it and keep it constant, which I think is an interesting approach. But I think with wild beer, sometimes you want it a little bit warmer to keep some action going. If you stored it at 8 degrees, not a lot's going to happen to it. Yeah,
I think you would not go wrong by storing it at 5 degrees C or 2 degrees C. It would just hold back any chemical and biological reactions. That's it, right? So it will keep it
2 degrees.
So essentially, right, if you stored it at 5 or 2 degrees, could be good for 20 years.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right there.
It would outlast us all, I think, at 2 degrees.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what law it is. There's some law that says all chemical reactions happen like 10 times fast, twice as. Oh, now I'm all. I don't remember it now, but it's a significant amount every 10 degrees C.
Really?
So, it's kind of exponential curve with the temperature.
Exponential. Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't even 10 degrees; it was 1 degree. So it really shows you, if you've got a beer that you should drink fresh, you should really treat it like a carton of milk, not a tin of beans. Really. But with these beers, like we were talking about, because of the bacteria fermentation and most likely Brettanomyces, these beers are pickled. They're preserved, so they will last in a cupboard for a lot longer. But storing them cold will keep them truer to how the brewer or blender did it on day one.
Yeah. Cool. Should we move on to beer number 3?
Yeah.
Amuse Chérie.
Yeah.
talk us through this beer. What's the concept?
Yeah, so this one was we had access to. Was able to get a load of cherries from Kent and also from Somerset, and we had we definitely had over a ton. I think it was around 1,500 liters. Pass that one over to Sam. Wow. So this is not a typical creek, I would say. The cherry and fermentation. So this is we had to get quite creative with how to deal with this fruit. We don't have like really great purpose-built fruiting tanks to extract the fruit flavor and then get the beer away from the fruit. And so what we ended up doing, to me, with this beer, with this cherry beer, the cherry has expressed itself a lot more herbal. The cherry pits are there. The skin tannin and character from the skin is there. And the herbal character I really get is like bay, or what did I write down earlier? Like cinnamon, almost. Cinnamon and bay. But this one's really fun in the sense we were able to. Myself and Andrew drove over to Kent to meet the farmer, Susie, who grew all the cherries, and loaded up the back of my truck with the first. It was about 400 kilos that I got in the back of my truck, and then it was great. We were driving away, and she runs out the house and was like, "Hey guys, I just made some brownies. Do you want some for the drive back?" And like, okay. So it was just lovely to be able to like meet the farmer that we can work with, and she was just a real person rather than just an exchange of product.
Money and product, yeah.
And then so those Kentish cherries and Somerset cherries, almost all of them had stems and leaves connected with them. And so what we did was it took about a week, because we had this big fruit week of strawberries, cherries, black currants, I believe. Black currants was that? Yeah. All happened within 2 weeks. And cherries took about a week. And everybody from our bookkeeper to sales director to Andrew to me to packaging team to seller team, everybody, our in-house kind of Jane, who looks after us in the kitchen, who cooks food for us and takes care of us. She was out there picking cherry stems off and taking care of it. And then we would take all the cherry stems off, put them into 20-liter buckets, and then we would smash them, turn into like a cherry smoothie. Then we'd put that in. That's how we used cherry. And we did it in 2 different tanks, in a foeder and a big stainless tank, just because the foeder wasn't big enough. And we made about 5,000 liters of this beer, which is, so I think, we really don't want to try to be the biggest wild brewery, sour brewery, but at the same time, we want to try to get to where these types of beers become a little bit price appropriate, like so that we can charge a price that doesn't cost the world to enjoy them, but they're made authentically and slowly. And so if you do all that effort and only make 1,000 liters, you really got to charge appropriately to keep all your lights on, and fairly, to keep all your lights on. So that's a really good thing. But we really tried to scale the brewery so that we could be big enough to make a little bit larger volume, so that we could make, it takes kind of the same amount of time to do every process if you make 5,000 liters as it does 2,000 liters, to an extent. 1,500 kilos of cherries takes a long time.
I've got an idea. 2 trucks. You need 2 trucks. And then
Yeah.
you need cherries.
We did. Yes, we did use. They delivered the rest.
Oh, okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
So you use a lot of fruit in what you do. Clearly, like, it's quite an abundant area you live in. But do you have a chefing background or anything?
Yes, I do. Thank you for leading into that. Yeah. So yeah, since I was, I think my first job that I ever had was an upholsterer, and then I couldn't get on with the music they played, and they never let me get out of stripping the upholstery off of their sofas. They never let me getting into actually upholstering. So I moved on into kitchens, and that was at I was probably 17, I think. And so since 17, which is, I've been focused on the way things taste and the interaction of eating and drinking and what people do when they go out and what kinds of flavors they interact with, what they do food wise, not other things. But so ever since then, just really focused on food and flavor and interacting with those things. And I think I've now been a brewer longer than I've been a chef. So I don't know if that makes me a chef anymore. I'm not sure, but that's what I do to relax, and that's how I shut off, so to speak. And so when we set up the brewery, Andrew is very much the same way. He's run numerous pubs in London, as well as around here in Somerset and in Herefordshire way, and is definitely a big foodie. He would cook at his own pubs as well, and did numerous beer dinners. That was how we really connected as friends at the previous brewery we worked at the beer factory. Was Andrew really started doing beer and food dinners back in 2011, 2010 in Bristol, and that was not really a thing back then. And I was the assistant brewer who would go and do all those food dinners with him, because I got on really well. Not that the head brewer didn't get on. He's a lovely guy, definitely a foodie guy, Christopher K. But I got on really well with the chefs, and that was something I was super interested in, was doing this. That's why brewing was a very natural evolution from cooking for me. Really natural. I didn't have to start brewing and go, oh, I want to make this the most bitter thing ever because I can. Because I knew that wouldn't taste very good for a customer, let alone me. So I started brewing from a point of, this has got to taste amazing. And I got to understand these ingredients. Okay, the process, if you can make sourdough bread then you can brew. You can follow your process. You can if you can make a cake, then you could brew. You've got to just understand the process of brewing. There's just times and temperatures, but what makes you into really making amazing beer is brewing a lot, so clocking in those hours, but also understanding the ingredients. So I would just use every hop that I could and make notes about it and write it down, just like I would in the kitchen. What does celery taste like when it's cooked versus when it's char grilled versus when it's in a mirepoix in a stew? How does Simcoe hops taste when it's boiled versus whirlpool versus dry hopped? And the expression of those hops are different at using different amounts or different temperatures. So paying attention to all those things, I knew that innately from day one. So that really helped me, only because my occupation before it was a chef, So I knew I had to pay attention to these ingredients. And so I focused on that first, and I could follow recipes really well because that's how I always trained. So I rambled a lot on that one.
No, that was great. We've also done some beers that have been sort of more foodie inspired as well. Like you had a truffle beer You had the mushroom beer, which I think you had tarragon or thyme or something too as well, and so there's very, very foodie elements that creep into your beers.
Yeah, a number of our beers were inspired by food or by cocktails. And yeah, later on, or not later on, sorry, in the box there's Dr. Todd. That was inspired by a cocktail. We made a beer from it. But from food, yes, there's Of the Sea, which is inspired by seafood bisque. There's Gazillionaire.
So that had literal fish in it, didn't it?
Huh?
That had literal seafood in it, Of the Sea.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Crustaceans.
Yeah, crabs, cockles, maybe some oysters, just for fun. Huh?
How do you make it safe to have like seafood in a beer?
You ferment it.
Just fermented, right? Okay.
So the fermentation will get will because the pH is low and the alcohol is there. Largely the pH being low, meaning it wasn't a sour beer. It was a normal type beer, but even in a normal beer, the pH is in quite a low range, kind of 3.9 to 4.2 at most. And so for a beer, that's a fairly good preserving quality. For a food product, that's a fairly good range of acid. Getting lower than that goes into much more like tart pickles and things like, lower than 3.9. You start getting into much more tart elements. We didn't know for certain what was going to happen with that beer, Of the Sea. It was bonkers, but great. Exactly. It was absolutely bonkers. So that was like a strong wheat beer, and using saffron, star anise, lobsters, cockles, crab bodies.
If you ever do it again, can we come film that happening?
Because we're going to be doing it again this year. Yeah, let's do it. You cut it. I didn't hear that last bit, but what you want to come and film? What did you say?
You making that beer, because visually, like adding all that stuff must just look absolutely nuts.
Yeah, it was crazy. So we actually brewed it twice because we put too much star anise in the first one. So we actually ended up having to double the volume. Sorry, I don't know what just happened.
The fact that you said like you're adding lobster and crab and cockles, and the thing that went wrong was you added a bit too much spice. Just too many star anise.
Yeah, too many. There's one too many stars. Yeah, no, the lobster, it was definitely not a vegan friendly day, because we cooked the lobsters in a typical lobster cooking way. They went into the boil on a string alive, and they came out about 7 minutes later, which is a little bit too much, sadly, to eat. And so we took them out, and then we got all the meat out, and all the brewery had like lobster rolls with brown butter and tarragon, and we had a big lunch, and then we stopped the brew day so we could take all the meat out of the lobster, and then we roasted the lobster bodies, and then we put them into the whirlpool, and then we roasted also all of the crab bodies as well to get like a deeper, richer character. And that's that like background of cooking. Like lobster bisque is one of my favorite. It's probably my favorite soup ever. And that, and another one from like San Francisco called Pepino. It's an amazing fish stew. So that's one of the seafood, one of the food beers. I want to do an Of the Land one. It's using what we call around here Mindip wallfish, which are snails.
Right.
Yeah. Wait, like people put
escargosa.
What?
Escargosa.
Escargosa. Ooh, that is a really good one. Yeah. I will definitely let you know if we do Of the Sea again.
Please do.
So then there's Gazillionaire. That was inspired. It wasn't we didn't get the balance quite right in that one, but that was a cinnamon cardamom kind of, like if you tried to make a white stout or a cream ale type thing, that would be the background of it. This lactose strong pale ale with cardamom and sweetness. It was inspired by this Swedish cardamom bread that I'd eat every Christmas at home. Really good. Inspiration for the beer really comes away, and that's what I really like, that natural evolution from cooking to brewing. Brewing is, yes, you can follow the 4 basic ingredients: water, yeast, barley, and hops, but also in brewing, you've got so many different times and temperatures you can add flavor to get into the final drink. Do you know what I mean? So you've got mash water, where we sometimes put in seaweed, like going from the inspiration of using Japanese cooking. I used to work at a Japanese restaurant, and we add in seaweed. Originally, we added in the mash water. Now we don't. We do it in the kettle, but we found that it just doesn't make as big of a difference on the flavor at the end product. But we used to do it at the beginning, and then, or you've got the mash tun, where it sits for a long time with the grain. But then you've got the boiling stage, or you've got after the boiling, where you can bring the temperature down for just kind of warm before fermentation. And for instance, if you add coriander seed before fermentation, the yeast will transform the linalool inside from the coriander, which is an aroma compound, into these really novel, like pineapple flavors. Where if we were to say centrifuge the beer, so it's clear, no yeast, and add in the coriander, you won't get those pineapple characters. You'll get the character of coriander. So you've got so many different stages in the beer making process that you can alter the flavor through by, say, using coriander. It would taste different if you boiled it versus if you used it in the fermentation versus if you added it after everything was done. So brewing is amazing and complex, but also just super easy.
Super easy. You just have a seafood lunch and then throw it in the bowl.
Yeah, why not?
There you go. I absolutely love this beer, by the way. It's really
oh yeah.
I think when people get cherry, they're expecting big, rich, deep, kind of almondine flavors and rich cherry flesh. This is bright and citrusy and zippy. Yeah, there's gooseberry going on with cherry. It's really fresh.
Gooseberry. You're right. Yeah, big gooseberry character. The cherries really kind of died out because it was the cherry. It's actually been sat around in tank and in bottle for a little while before everything was ready on it.
Jen is asking, where are you from, Brett? You say coriander like us.
I am mostly from California. Well, yeah, mostly California.
You sure?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking, actually, I was wondering if I've spent more time in Somerset than I have in California, but not yet. Not yet.
You're working on
eating traditional Swedish stuff as well.
Yeah, my family traveled a fair bit, and we just really liked flavors and food from around the world. And also in California, I think we do that quite a bit.
Yeah,
extremely multicultural in California. In the city I grew up in, Caucasian was a minority, and that's not always the case in America. But so it feels at home when there's lots of flavors, lots of ethnicities around, and yeah. So Swedish pastries for breakfast on Christmas. Why not?
Yeah, hell yeah.
Not that there's lots of Swedish people in Visalia. There's lots of Dutch people in Visalia, but
in where?
Yeah.
What's the town called? Oh, look at that one.
Yeah.
They're all up sort of north, aren't they? they're up in like Newfoundland and stuff. Is that right?
I don't know.
Or is that the? Yeah, I think they are.
I'm going to let you be the expert on that one.
I'm not even American, so I wouldn't trust me.
Brad will have seen some bizarre documentary in the depths of YouTube that he's got that from, and he'll never be able to track it down again. Basically, half of Craft Beer Channel content is stuff Brad watched on YouTube, stuff Johnny knows about beer, and somehow we cram it together into a video each week.
Perfect.
There's a lot of Nordic people in Minnesota as well, I think, judging by the accent.
Okay.
Like Fargo and
Minnesota.
Like
yeah. I spent a good 4 years of growing up in Wisconsin, which is
Cheesehead.
Yeah. Proper cheesehead, but happy cows come from California.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sunshine.
Yeah, more cheese out of California than Wisconsin.
Really?
Yeah, more oranges were grown in my county growing up than all of Florida.
Whoa.
And that's just our county. Yeah.
Is that Orange County or is that a different county?
No, that is a different county. This is
How many oranges do they make?
not so many. It's very concrete jungle in Orange County nowadays.
Yeah.
It's part of LA. It probably used to be. Because there's like in our area there's a place called Lemon Cove and they grow lemons and grapefruits, and it's very agricultural where I grew up because it's a valley at the bottom of the Sierra Nevada mountain range, and it's very hot and we can channel all the snow melt, and so it gets loads of sun, controllable water, and the ground is really good, the earth for growing, so we can grow amazing produce. So like California raisins, California walnuts, almonds, oranges, all kinds of stuff.
Are you gonna? You might have already done it, but you're gonna make some sort of California beers in Sunset. You're gonna bring some of the stuff home.
Oh, I don't know. No, maybe.
I'd love something really raisiny.
Raconteur. Try Raconteur later.
Yeah.
It's like
feeling we are going to crack the barley wine at some point.
Yeah.
I think it might have to happen.
I keep saying it.
So I'm ready for the next beer.
Let's do it.
Let's do Circadian IPA. So I've never had this one, so I'm super excited to try it. What's the concept behind this one?
Circadian is awesome. So it's in a wax top bottle for one. Let me just, before we go into that, I'll just talk about a recommendation on opening it. So I'm going to open it just with a table knife, so not sharp. And I already started the process. But what I'm going to try to do is make kind of like a smiley face underneath. So I just am going to show you this just so you don't have to use a sharp knife. So I've kind of made a little groove underneath the cap. And you can pop it out just like that. Yeah. That allows you then to get your bottle opener just under. I'm going to put it down on the table. So you open it. And then there you go.
I feel like we're on Blue Peter now.
You're on what?
Blue Peter. It's like a kids program where they would make sort of things, toilet rolls, and they make like a rocket ship out of a toilet roll or something.
Yeah, exactly. Blue Peter's awesome.
I've done the smiley face, so
it just that's how I recommend to do it to everybody, because I just don't want anybody doing it with a sharp knife. It's really easy to cut yourself, and you often try to go at it like just proper stabbing it, and your fingers are up there, and you can just easily slip. And yeah, look at that, just like a Orval top. So,
trying a different one. The last one didn't work. There we go.
It's got a big aroma, Brett. I'm excited by this.
This is we in the last kind of 12 months, we have really started. Let me try to get that. Really started working with sour beers and hops. We just didn't do a lot of that there was just a lot of other things to play around with, like shellfish.
Who needs help when we've got lobster?
Exactly. Oh, that just makes me smile.
Let me and Brad deconstruct this, because it's super complex, but also from here, so the beer is here and I'm here, it's all American hops, right?
Yeah.
It's like a normal IPA from here, and then you get closer, and other little things are just popping out.
That's very confusing. It smells very interesting.
Sauvignon Blanc and acidity, sherbet. Woof. Really lovely, fresh but complex aroma.
So that's a sour beer I want to get into a can.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it translates perfectly for like the tone of the craft beer movement right now. Yeah, so like amazing hoppy beer in a 440 ml can. It is the current era, and if I just wish we could get this through our canning line, but I don't want to sacrifice all our other beer that goes through the canning line.
You have a lot of mixed ferm IPA coming out.
Yeah, that won't taste like this. It will taste a little bit quite off. Yeah. So this beer saw a lot of processes. It part of it went into a cool ship, but the primary yeast fermentation was Kveik yeast. So we went into a cool ship to try to. So there's two reasons on that. Well, actually, I'll tell you the whole process, and then I'll go talk about little bits of what I was thinking and whatnot. So on brew day, we brewed it, and effectively we put it all into our two cool ships. It wasn't quite. Our cool ships aren't big enough to hold all of our brews, so some of it went into a fermenter, but just to wait. But it went into cool ships to cool down naturally overnight, very slowly. And then in the morning, came back in on a Tuesday or something and pumped the beer out of the cool ships into the fermenter, where we put in Kveik yeast. That's a yeast, a Norwegian kind of farmhouse yeast that ferments really warm. That really we get kind of good pineapple-y characters out of the yeast that we use, and which I can't remember the exact name of. But I'm sure Sam will help me out when he hears it back on the delay. But after the fermentation, we then actually spun out the yeast through our centrifuge, or most of the yeast. We just wanted to get the bulk of this really lot of yeast in there. We didn't want to put all that yeast inside the barrels because we didn't want autolysis happening. We didn't want meaty, rich character. So we centrifuged it, and then but didn't do too much centrifuging because we didn't want to lose any bacteria that we picked up from the cool ship. And then we put in a white wine yeast. It's like a Viognier yeast that's really good for aging and maturing. Oh, well, this yeast is actually meant to autolysize. It gives off kind of brioche, rich, fuller character, but not Marmite necessarily, and also not diacetyl. When I say brioche, buttery character, not diacetyl, but a different mouth-filling type character. Because this beer is actually, the final gravity of this one is probably down at 1.5 or so, I think. Final gravity of this one, yeah. Sam's gonna have a look, but it's like measurably like 0 sugar, so it should be like intensely dry on your palate. But But because of this Viognier yeast and the barrel aging, you get tannins from the barrels and you get the autolysis from this yeast to give this body. And after adding this yeast, after the centrifuge, we put it into oak barrels. And for 0.3 is the final gravity. Then it goes into barrel. It went into barrel for about 3 months before we selected a few of the barrels. So we still have a number of them in our barrel cellar for this blend. This was right when COVID-19 started happening, and we purchased the bottles already. So we've got to purchase these bottles like 2 months before we actually want to bottle it. So it's quite difficult sometimes with tasting notes and all that, but also exactly how much we get. So we only ordered a certain number of bottles, and then COVID-19 happened. So we didn't do as big of a blend because we didn't have any draft sales. So we still have a bunch of barrels still aging away, maturing. After barrel aging, we blended it, like I said, and we added in dry hops. So also I'd say in the kettle stage, it was not hopped very heavy and not whirlpool hopped. It was just a small amount of hops at the beginning, very small of aged hops at the beginning to try to grab some cheesy notes from those hops. And let's see, it was dry hopped quite heavily with I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget. Hang on, because I think I generally spin this around a bit too many times. Yeah, it was Mosaic was the key hop to it, but then the secondary hop in there was an American Noble hop called Citra American Noble. Did that make sense to you guys?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, that's another one. It's Citra, but it's been de-bittered.
Oh.
So it's the co-product or byproduct of cryo hops.
So it's right. the sort of not intense bit. It's the non-intense bit of the cryo hop.
Yeah. So when in the process of making cryo hops, you freeze it and so all the oil and lupulin, oil and lupulin freeze, and you shatter it, and they collect all the dust, and they turn that into hot cryo hops, and then all the leaf, called the brack, all the leaf gets like blown away on these conveyor belts and collected. And all that leaf, what they found was that leaf actually still has a lot of these oils and still has alpha acid, still has bitterness, but it's down at like 1 to 3% alpha acid, where when they originally put the hops in, they would have been up at like 13% alpha.
Does it make it more like a noble hop then? Is that what you said? It's more like
So what it does, it doesn't make it into a noble hop.
But it's sort of the same sort of.
It's a lot more leafy. It's a lot more chlorophyll, grassy, woody, but has all these flavor notes of Citra or Mosaic or Equinaut or whatever. Name another one. Whatever one is cryo hop these days, going into the tastiest juicy bomb there is. So
why did you do that? Why did you want that grassier, less intense to go with Mosaic, which is obviously very intense?
Yeah. Why did I want that?
Why not?
I don't know. I thought it would work.
It was just an instinctive. You should try that.
Yeah, I think with beers, hoppy beers, it started with maybe Evolver that we used to brew, which is a 100% Brettanomyces IPA. That beer always had some noble hops in it, and that was a note just a gut feel and a noticing that I don't think that European or non-American hops, more so European hops specifically, I don't think they age in the same way. Like the flavor factor as they age, they don't just degrade in a really horrible way in the same way that American hops, at least the IPA hops, gotta do two at the same time. When those age, when Mosaic, Citra, Amarillo, or whatever, when those age, they don't age beautifully and gracefully. But when a Saz ages, it can age kind of gracefully. Maybe look at Orval, for instance, dry hopped. It's quite a hoppy beer, but yet it tastes amazing as it ages. I mean, you don't have vertical tastings of, and I know it's got Brettanomyces for sure, but you don't have in the first 12 months, you don't get this massive hit of Brettanomyces necessarily from Orval. So if you look at like Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, you don't do a 3-month, a 6-month, 9 and 12-month-old pale ale and think, wow, this is aged amazingly and look at the nuances. But you would do that with Orval, and you see the. But I guess I don't know. I don't know. I'm kind of working myself into a hole there because it has that Brettanomyces. But I think that interplay with European hops and wild yeast and bacteria is something to include in these beers. And this is an American noble, so it's probably not the same, but I thought I'd try.
See how it ages. But I mean, I get what you mean. Definitely, like, Orval is a hoppy beer, and yet 12 months in, you're not getting those cardboard musty kind of flavors that you would from an American IPA. Maybe it's obviously different levels of hoppiness, but still it's just not a flavor compound I've ever found in Orval. It does seem to age gracefully as well as have that Brett really through sort of 9 to 12 months.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah. No, what was that question?
Yes. Can you explain how an IPA can also be sour? So what's the definition of an IPA, Brett, and how's this one?
Definition of IPA. The cop out and accurate answer is it depends. But almost every beer question is like that, I'm sure. But an IPA, I don't know if I can answer that. I'm not very good at answering that question because I just go like historical and then kind of modern historical, and then you mix in like, I don't know, Firestone Walker and Cloudwater and the Colonel, and I don't know, it just gets too long
on your hands. Yeah. I mean, I guess the simple answer is that IPA is a million different things. It's actually just a marketing tool at this point that just says it's going to be really hoppy and it's quite strong.
Yeah.
So yeah, have IPA. I think it is down to the use of the hops, the level of the hops, and perhaps to some extent the ABV. So beneath that, brewers are doing all kinds of different stuff and still calling it IPA. Like, New England IPA is not really an IPA because it's pretty yeast dominant. It's pretty low bitterness. It's not really the IPAs that came before it.
Yeah, and I really like. I really like what I've talked with Garrett Oliver and just talking about naming beers, and that with New England IPA, there was definitely a chance for the people involved in that kind of movement at the beginning to really to set a name up for that. And because it doesn't resemble an IPA, it's an amazing beer, and those brewers have done an amazing job at creating that kind of character and that style and all that stuff. So I'm not at all harping on about any of that. I just a side note, it's not an IPA though. It's a whole new beer. It's an amazing new beer that deserves its own name. And
that's what I mean by a marketing tool, because they invented this whole new style, and to make it sell, to know that it would sell, if you put IPA on it, you kind of know it will.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't follow that until then. just trying to find my blending sheet on this beer. Huh. I don't see it. I was just trying to find someone asked about the sourness. Because the reason why I'm trying to find my blend sheet on it, it's not there, was because we used some sour barrels from a different beer to be blended into this one to bring some acidity.
Mhm.
Because this beer, it did have some. Did we? No, actually, I'm thinking of Bats Valley there. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up between. We've just released Bats Valley.
And Bats Valley is fucking amazing, by the way. If anybody hasn't tried it,
That is properly like
one of my beers of the year. So
man.
good.
Thank you. I'm actually getting it mixed up with Bats Valley. I must be. This was a batch beer, so we brewed this. We put it in oak barrels. We took some of only those oak barrels out in the blend. But we were notorious for like making a blend and going, oh, you know what? This really needs a little bit of maltiness. Let's taste some of the Modus barrels and see if some of that character can work in this blend. So I wouldn't put it beyond us to use maybe a multi beer like Modus in a blend like this, if the blend was bigger. So it's a smaller percentage. But this one, the sourness on this one is down to the bitterness is quite low.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not too bad. Not too bad. So we were able to get some bacteria growth.
So tell us about Quake. We've mentioned it a couple of times today, and I think maybe we should explain what Quake yeast is and what's so magical about it.
Yeah, I gotta say I'm not the best expert on that one. I will say that just in case I get a bunch of crap from people saying, no, it's not true or something. But it is a kind of a yeast strain that there's multiple, what's it called? I'm trying to use the right words on this one. There's multiple types of Kvike yeast. It's kind of, it is, I do not believe it's a Saccharomyces. Is it a Saccharomyces? No, I don't think it is. It's kind of like how Brettanomyces, it's a beer fermenting yeast, but there's multiple strains of Brettanomyces. And in brewing, you have Saccharomyces, and you also have lager, which I cannot remember the technical name of off the top of my head. Not Saccharomyces. And you have multiple strains of ale yeast and lager yeast, Kvike yeast, and Brettanomyces.
It's like a whole new little family of
a whole new family, yeah. And it's only I remember going out to Norway 5 years ago, and it's probably around 5 years ago, and being introduced to this and going, cool, Norwegian farmhouse yeast, that's amazing, like Somerset farmhouse yeast or stuff like that. There is a sour beer in this. Sam's just telling me he's just found the blend sheet in this beer. There's a barrel of Cool Sip beer in this blend. I knew there was something in there. So this is our Cool Sip beer, 100% spontaneous, blended into Circadian to bring much more complexity to it. Sorry. So within Kvike, you can have different yeast strains, different strains of Kvike, and they can be bringing very much kind of tropical notes, pineapples, passion fruits, guavas, those types of character. And it is a yeast that is much more like a cat than it is a dog. It survived, a dog is very domesticated. it probably won't survive very long on its own, just out in the wild in Britain. Maybe in India, but maybe not here in Britain. But a cat, on the other hand, that'll just like, it's a fighter, right? It'll just do it'll do its own thing. It'll survive. It'll become stronger for it. And that's Kveik and that's Brettanomyces. But brewing Saccharomyces, like ale yeast or lager yeast, that stuff just dies very quickly. It's meant to be used and abused and then die. And it's more of a dog. It's a companion you need to take care of. And yeah, it's not a cat. So hopefully that wasn't too much of a weird analogy, but
I've never heard the metric of a cat or a dog about how hard it is to tender a yeast. Great.
and it's also, you can think of it like Kveik yeast is, you would traditionally like you would ferment your beer in very small batches in Norway. These Norwegian farmhouse breweries. There's very few like large industrial or no large industrial farmhouse yeast brewers. But you'd brew it in like your garden or and there would often be a raw beer. And then at the end of it, you would take your beer away and your yeast slurry, you would actually trap that inside. You would either trap it in a cake like form and you'd bake it to dry it, or you would use this like wooden wreath. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like this interlocked, almost looks like a wooden puzzle that you'd like play with at Christmas, you know. You would like slop this around the yeast and then let it dry, and then this dried yeast ring is what you would dip inside your next batch a couple months later.
Hang it to dry and just wait until you need it. Yeah, it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, and so that would never work with an ale yeast or a lager yeast. It would die completely. With Brettanomyces, it may work. It's not a typical thing to do. I've never done it. But with this Norwegian yeast, it really can be like left to its own devices. It just wants to do its own thing. And if you use this yeast as if it's just a normal brewing yeast, so you bring it into your brewery, you propagate it, you give it really good health, you've got nutrients, it's the right temperature for it in the like mid 20s up to like 35, all the way up to 40 maybe, it will ferment like crazy in like 24 to 48 hours. It is a Cerevisiae. Being told it is a Saccharomyces cerevisiae. So I don't know. That old lot just went out the window. Who else is here drinking Busch Light? Oh man, awesome.
We've just had our first super chat come in from Ben Filmbusters. Thank you very much, Ben.
Cool. Thanks, Ben.
Always appreciated. Should we have a little chat about Raconteur? Because I think I'm going to crack it as a nightcap with. And maybe we should shift at this point, while we do crack that, to our final section of the show, which is Ask Us Anything. So we'll a question from Ben. Tell us about Raconteur.
Okay. Should we open it?
Yeah, I'm just got a tiny bit of this left, and then I'll be cracking.
I'm just making a super blend here.
A terrible.
I know. It's terrible that I'm doing that.
Yeah,
Raconteur was a barley wine that we brewed back in 2012. We also brewed about another barley wine in 2012 called... Oh, no. That was it. We called it Zulu Charlie. That was just for barrel. We never released it as Zulu Charlie. But we still have it aging away in our oak barrels, and I need to go get in there and taste it. That was brewed to celebrate Andrew and Fleur's son, Zachary. He was born in 2012. That was the year we started the brewery, and we brewed this barley wine, aged it in Marc de Bourgogne barrels. Originally, the original blend was only Marc de Bourgogne barrels, which is this kind of grappa type spirit. amazing. There's like most memorable barrel aged beer, single blend. I don't know. For me, is amazing. Like liquid raisins, it was crazy. This gets very close to that, but it mixes in like flavors of prunes and strawberries. Let me get some in my glass.
That is a bold aroma. Massive.
Yeah. And, you know, these beers, we actually don't do a lot. Like, this is a quite, like you mentioned, it's quite a high ABV box. We actually, like, the majority of beers we make day in, day out are not that high alcohol. But if you wanted to put a box together for some people who really like beer and really like flavor, then the thing with alcohol is that in order to get a lot of alcohol, you've got to put a lot of ingredients in. And so if you put a lot of ingredients in, you're going to be adding loads of flavor and loads of aroma. And that's like, that's what we're going for, at least on these. You know, these are beers that we want to deliver a wow through some of these beers. These are kind of like our signature beers, so to speak. And, you know, these are not the fridge fillers. Yeah. Cooking, what do I say? I say like brewing with alcohol is like cooking with butter. Like brewing with lots of alcohol, right? So you're getting lots of alcohol. You've got lots more carbohydrates. That alcohol kind of translates to carrying lots of flavor, lots of unctuousness, lots of other malty, hoppy, whatever. You know, you can put the same amount of hops into a Busch Light, but it won't carry the same amount of flavor as it would in a double IPA because the alcohol strips the hop oils out of the hops, and also it like carries and binds to it, where it just won't even do that with that Busch Light at 3.1 or whatever it is. There's definitely a time and place for that Busch Light, so well done.
I feel like I've just had like 3 sips and my cheeks have already gone a little bit red, a little bit flushed. It's a lovely, like rich, boozy, like funky raisin, brandy vibes, loads of oak on it.
It's a raisiny bad boy. This would make me fall asleep on the toilet if I drank too much of it.
It's a toilet sleeper beer.
This is a wintertime beer for me. I'd love to sup that, you know, sitting it on a fire of a Christmas sort of eve with some cheese. I've eaten most of my block of cheese, by the way, guys. If anyone
Have
cares.
you?
Yeah.
Well done.
Cheese.
I haven't. I've been talking.
Dinner.
Sorry.
Right, let's have a little look at some questions. Let's go with this one first. Michael Anderson. How many barrels do you have just aging in that warehouse? I think clearly you've been saying just aging quite a bit. But you must have hundreds of barrels, hundreds and hundreds.
Yeah. Have I been saying just aging? I didn't catch that.
Just got this aging, just got that aging.
Oh, yeah.
This thing aging.
Oh, yeah. I mean, these ones, that one. We have probably, at the moment, it's kind of come down a little bit. It's probably around 350 to 400 full oak barrels of beer. And then, but that's been reduced. We just found that our blends were too big. The market is very different now. There's a lot other people making really good mature wild beers. A lot other breweries kind of matured in their cellars have matured. I should say it that way.
Yep.
And which is good. Which is a good thing. So the number in our cellar has actually come down, and now. But yeah, anyways. So around 400 probably.
Do you brew any Pilsners or Dunkels or Lager style beers?
Yeah. We've got we use lager yeast in a couple of our beers. So there's one that is relatively newly released this year at least. And in a large way right now, we've got quite a lot going to be going out in a box set soon. And that's a beer called Quantic. We don't really talk about it as a lager yeast on the can. Where actually I think we say it's a session IPA, but it's made with lager yeast. I don't know if I should say that. Oops.
Given away.
I don't think it's wrong to say that, but it's I was definitely not intending or trying to make any sort of IPL or session IPL or something, right? So it's dry, it's crisp, it's full of Simcoe, some little bit of Cascade. It's a beautiful beer called Quantic. So that beer is perfect for the summertime. It's coming out. I think it's on our web shop now. Let's see. What else are we using lager yeast in, Sam? What else are we using lager yeast in right now? Quantic and oh yeah, Shika and Sleeping Limes. All three of those beers have very different fermentation profiles, but all have the same yeast. Yeah, so like Sleeping Limes is fermented up at like 18 degrees C, where Shika is fermented much cooler. Shika is a quite a hoppy lager, but kind of grassy, limey, citrusy, and then Quantic. That's kind of a middle ground on the fermentation. We try to get some esters out of it through the fermentation, some fermentation flavor, so it's a bit warmer, but not up in the 18 degrees like Sleeping Limes. That beer is just trying to be like this amazing dirty lime lager. It's great.
Yeah, like a margarita. Margarita inspired kind of lager thing. It's really cool beer.
And then actually we did some beers for Flavorly, and we did I Heart Yuzu, which was like should have used like 5 times the amount of yuzu, but I set the recipe up different. But it was a very low alcohol lager that uses yuzu. And Lager Beast, which was the second runnings off of Wildebeest as a dark lager. That was done last Christmas time. Still got a couple of kegs of that. It's tasting really good and malty still, really nice, aged really well. But so a number of lagers used very differently. But yeah.
Yeah, nothing classic, but playing around with that canvas that
no
Lager gives you.
Yeah. Sorry, that was a long answer.
So Charlie Rogers asks if you know Casey Brewing, which we featured on the channel quite recently. They make fantastic mixed fermentation beer. And actually, Bats Valley really reminded me of Casey's hoppy saisons when I had it, and we chatted briefly about that when you and me did a video a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
You know that is?
I don't think I've had. If I have, is that Casey Brewing and Blending?
Yeah, out in Colorado.
Yeah, I think I've met him once, but I don't think I've had any of his beers. Yeah, no, not yet. I don't think so. No, have yet to have the pleasure.
I've just seen a comment saying Gordon came through, but I can't find the original guy who was waiting for his beer from Gordon. But if it's true, go Gordon.
Callum Trimble is a super chat.
Oh, there we go. Callum, so great to hear that you...
So Gordon came... Oh, you've got it. There you go.
Yeah. So great to hear that he came through. Glad you like... the Modus, I thought was tasting really, really great. And yeah, most of what we do is sort of IPA-based on these live shows. Maybe because it helps sell the boxes. But it's been really wonderful to have so many people buying these wild beers. And to see like lots of people saying that was their first ever Flemish Red. So,
wow.
Yeah, bless you for having the faith in us in leading you quite literally up a garden path and into some very new flavours. And thank you very much, Callum, for your super chat. Will you be brewing Billionaire again?
So, probably not Billionaire as its original. That was another food inspired or food ingredient inspired beer. So when you make a imperial stout and age it, one of the concerns is that it can go, especially age it in barrels, it can go really soy sauce like, real meaty. And so I thought, well, why don't we just try to accept that and go there? And so we used caramelized miso in that beer, and tonka beans. It was brilliant. Loved that beer. That was really good. But we are looking at kind of reinventing some, not reinventing, maybe reinventing wildebeest, but really that will just go into a different imperial stout. And I don't know. Does anybody have any comments on what kind of imperial stout they'd like to see brewed by the Wild Beer Company? Would love to hear if people do, because I'm looking at making a new one, a new kind of fresh and clean imperial stout. We'll have Babs and Whiny Beast, because those are phenomenal. Those are, I don't know if have you guys had those, Johnny or Brett?
Fantastic.
Babs is, I think, an amazing.
I'm not sure.
How did the name Babs come about?
It's easy. It's barrel aged blended stout.
Okay, of course it is.
Yeah. So that's a beer that we intentionally, we want to paint a picture of an amazing stout, a complex, long depth and length of character and flavor, but we don't have the colors for the picture yet. So what we've got to do is we've got to brew the colors, put them in oak barrels, and develop those colors so that then months and years later we can then paint the picture with those new colors. And that's Babs. That's wild and barrel aged brewing at its best. You've got to create your ingredients as a brewer to then blend it later.
Awesome.
We've got two people asking if they can get Wild Beer Co in the States. Do you guys have a partner? Is it possible?
Oh, Brian. I know Brian. We do have a partner in the States that our importer is Be United, but we have not been doing too much importing into the States these days. It's definitely in the States, the wild and sour market has exploded and matured, that there is so many great quality sour and wild beers that we just don't compete with them over there on price, and it just ends up being way too expensive in the States. So sadly, it's just the rate of sale isn't there, so it just gets kicked off.
Yeah, I mean, it's both a blessing and a curse, isn't it? So many fantastic wild beer producers, but it's still a relatively small market, so it's tough to get that rate of sale. Which links to a question from Charlie saying, "Sours and saisons are the new IPA." I think the answer is I wish.
IPA, yeah, we all know that.
IPA, next IPA.
Well, what was the last line on that question? Today I read a bit slow. What styles do you see as trending? That's an interesting one. So I think, the sours and saisons, they have been on the cusp. They have been always on the cusp, but haven't they? Not the cusp of IPA, because there's no way there's going to be the same kind of amount of IPAs. Hello, Kitty. As in IPAs, like you're not going to see the same hit as with saisons and sours in the craft beer world, probably, but
but outside of that niche bubble, it's
no.
I mean, the joy of the IPA is it's so accessible in terms of flavors. It's kind of appealing to the kid in you, particularly New England IPAs, like all these lovely mango, tropical flavors that taste like umbongo and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then when you come to a sour beer and it's acidic, it might still be bitter. It'll be funky, bretty, farmyardy stuff. It's like that is all flavors to get into.
Yeah, and I don't know of any beers that are trending that are kind of coming up to the IPA mark. I think IPA is just kind of coming into its own in this country, seeing that it's in major supermarkets now in multitudes, right? So you see only in the last 12 months can we get big hazy IPAs fresh from Tesco's, Morrison's, and the like, right? So that's in the normal world now, in the big world.
Chris Stoneham asks, with the releases of beers like Quantic and Lillerib, while trying to find more space for day-to-day drinking, and would Brett say or would he say that's always been a thing?
I definitely say that's always been a thing. Lirapip, I don't know what it means. Andrew called it that, but I like it. It's a fun word to say. Lirapip.
Lirapip.
So Lirapip is 2.7%, super hoppy, all American noble hops. So I was kind of like trying to experiment and learn about those hops. Very hoppy beer, but very sessionable. But we do a good amount of session everyday beers like Bibble and Pogo, Quantic, Fresh. Don't do Fresh that much anymore, but yeah. We're brewers at the heart of what we do. We like IPAs and hops and lagers to be in the fridge, not just sours. I don't drink 2 bottles of sour a night, but I very, very well could drink. Yeah, pickle me. But I could very easily drink two cans of pale ale a night.
You're 2 years old, aren't you, Brett?
Yeah. I am. I'm about 200 years. So a little bit older than you think.
Graham sent in an idea for an imperial stout, a dark chocolate strawberry vibe.
Ooh, 70% cocoa. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of chocolate. Chocolate and raspberry and chocolate and strawberry are wonderful combinations.
Yeah.
Be very into that.
Yeah. So the last couple of years we've been doing a beer called Jambo, dark chocolate and cherry, raspberry. Sorry.
Somebody said do a cherry version of that. Basically, would be good.
Yeah.
Nitro salted caramel. Nitro unsalted caramel would be good to try and get that creamy caramel vibe.
Dude, so we would love to do that. It just takes the money and the infrastructure to install a nitrogen tank and nitrogen equipment, basically. But our millionaire salted caramel chocolate milk stout. There we go. That beer is just phenomenal. It just always surprises me how enjoyable it is to drink all year round, and it's always surprising how many people think the same. like it just keeps selling in the summertime, and it's one of those things I think we need to just, as a company, just keep going, keep talking about it, and try to nitrogenate it. You're right. Yeah, definitely.
Craig Andrews, thank you for your super chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, Babs 3 is coming soon.
Removing the table. Yeah, Babs 3 is coming. Sorry, my Sam was getting excited with his elbows. moving my camera. Yes, Babs 3 is coming, and actually Sam did the winning blend on the last blending. Man, we're getting all the flies right now. All the flies in the brewery are just coming after us in our open bottles of beer, I think.
Soft acetic they're getting from the modus. They're like, "Ooh, that's my jam."
Yeah. Babs 3. There's a very seminal beer that got me that really clicked for me about blending, and that was a Firestone Walker in California. They're quite a large regional brewery, and they do an anniversary beer. I think they started doing it at like year 10, maybe. And what they do, it's in the new wine country of California, and they've got lots of winery friends and wine blender friends, and they Matt Brindelson, he gets all his friends, his winemaker friends, into the brewery, and he throws like a banquet and whatnot, but he has them all do some work, blend a beer. So he and his team brew these beers, barrel age these beers, and then he brings them out and he allows all the winemakers to blend the best beer they can blend. Yeah, so the brewers do their job, and then they leave it up to the wine blenders to blend the best beer. So it's a very different approach, and I think it really ends up having a different kind of beer to have these different trades smell and taste and blend the final beer. And particularly the memory was on Firestone Walker 13, and that blend was phenomenal. It was, and I remember sitting with Chris Kay, who's the guy he was my Jedi master when it comes to brewing. He taught me everything, and we sat there and drank this in like silence because it was just captivating, and it was a great time, great moment, and it really clicked. Like, why don't we have this art and this skill in brewing that winemakers have when it comes to blending? That we generally in craft brewing just think of one batch of beer, get it in a can, get it in a bottle, let's enjoy it. Let's brew it again, and we'll tweak it, we'll change it. But why don't we brew that batch and go, ooh, it's not quite right. Let's brew another one slightly different that's over the top on this other hop, and then let's blend them together to get it finally correct. And you can really see that in modus operandi, where we would never get to modus operandi as the final beer if we did it in a batch process in one oak fruiter, because we need the bourbon flavor and we need the red wine flavor. So we need those different components aging and maturing uniquely and differently to then come together at the end.
Yeah, so really, like, it's so hard to explain the benefits and the joys and the complications of blending. And I think over 2.5 hours, we have almost got there and explained, I think, a lot of people who are seeing it as new. So we're going to wind it up in about 8 minutes. We usually go for 2.5 hours. So we've got some last questions coming through. Firstly, is Brad working on his tie-dye range? You making some more, Bradders?
No one wanted them, so I didn't make any more. I just wear them exclusively myself.
We have had requests for tie-dye T-shirts on the live show, so I think I sold a couple of books actually last week to people because it sold out on Beer Merchants and they didn't want to use Amazon. So if you do want to buy one, drop us an email, craftbeerboys@gmail.com, and I'll get Brad to send you one out.
Yeah, I made them in the bath with bleach and stuff. So
yeah, totally safe.
Yeah,
very normal. Take a bath with bleach.
That's it, right?
Where else have we got some?
My cat is called Jeff, and she is 10 years old, although she looks very small. I can't believe you can't get her to actually model for the camera. I know, she's not playing ball. She's a wild yeast of a cat.
A wild yeast of a cat. Yep.
She does as she does.
Yeah. I think we've had 2 different people ask for a white chocolate beer.
Ooh, okay.
I
really like white chocolate.
White chocolate.
Yeah, I like it.
I guess white chocolate is tricky because you can't use cacao nib. So you're just using the fatty part of the chocolate, which is what white chocolate is. So that fat and beer don't go together because they kill the head in the conditioning, don't they?
Yeah.
More like vanilla and stuff in it to get that kind of vibe.
Yeah, you gotta be inspired by the flavor and the mouthfeel and the texture and emulate that. Not use it. You've gotta, unless there's some sort of like dehydrated white chocolate powder, which doesn't sound right.
Lactose if we have to.
Yeah.
A
Milky Bar beer, that'd be pretty good. I don't know, like a milk stout or something.
Do you know, I was judging beer judging for SIBA today. And I got the strong ale category, which included barley wines. And I had a barley wine that tasted exactly like Karamak bars. Do you remember that?
I love a Karamak bar.
It was too sweet, even for a barley wine, but it was really tasty.
Oh wow! I don't know what a Karamak. Karamak?
Karamak is sort of like a white chocolate bar, but it's got like kind of caramel jazzed in it. So
Yeah.
sort of like really, it's got way more flavour, and it's the texture of it's a bit kind of what would you say? A bit grainy, Johnny. I don't know if that's to do with the
Yeah, a
sugar.
little bit of that Hershey's chocolate kind of vibe to it, but it's more flavour. I remember like this lovely, somewhere between white chocolate, salted caramel, almost like malted milk kind of flavour as well.
Right.
An awesome chocolate bar. I don't know whether it still exists or not, but that would be a great inspiration. A Karamak.
Is it a bit like brown butter, like the Norwegian?
Yeah,
it's that kind of.
I love brown butter.
Mm.
Well, there we go. There you go. Brown butter stout. Done. Karamak bar. Oh, here we go. Are you planning on any more blending boxes with a video, just like the last one?
We are. Is there any on there now? We are. We will be continuing to do them. I don't know. I don't think there's any on there. I think that's why you're asking that. But I'm loving it. I love doing them. I wish we could do a lot more of them, but sometimes it just is too much. Yeah, and it was amazing at the beginning of and throughout this whole lockdown, the interaction and being able to connect with people through this type of medium has been great. It's been really great. It's gotten my energy going on interacting with people more, and giving me a cool platform to be able to do it. I'm glad that so many people are engaging with you guys and us, but so I hope I can get into YouTube a little bit more and get filming and sharing that way.
So yeah, I hope you had plans for a YouTube channel. I hope it happens.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we're going to wind it down there. Brett, thank you so much for joining us and for putting that time aside. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned a huge amount. I don't know about everybody else about the process of blending and I've also got renewed respect. I forgot how wild Beer Co is, all the crazy stuff they've done, and how more needs to be, I think, said about the experiments that you guys have done, almost so no one else has.
Man, there's more.
We need more. The lobster roll day when you're making that wild, crazy food beer. That's amazing.
Oh well, let's do it. Let's brew that beer just so you can come down and we can hang out.
Yes, if you can sell it, we will film it.
Yeah. We can. I don't know. Well, we'll make it, and it will be great. I don't know if we'll sell it. Like, we just got to find people crazy enough that are are kind of crazy. But that I will say the tasting boxes. We've found there's another platform that's not tasting box. It's like more of an everyday, just kind of enjoying fridge filling box of beer. Our pale ales and some more interesting stuff as well. But that is down for, it's a little plug, sorry, but for another channel, not a YouTube channel, I don't think.
Straight.
What's it called? Stand-up chat show, I believe. Crap. What was it called, Sam? What was it called? Stand-up chat show? Yeah, stand-up chat show. So it's actually on now. We missed it tonight, but it's the next 4 week Fridays. Hopefully it's not at the same time as you guys. I'll stop talking if it is.
Don't worry from now on.
Yeah, okay, good. But it's a very startup, brand new thing, and they're really quite green behind the ears, so to speak. We're kind of linked up with them a little bit, and you can buy a case of beer on like a special little discount code and sit down, watch some comedy, some really good comedy, hopefully, and interact with it. It's kind of this live performance, professional comedy acts that you can interact with and drink some good beer. So it's definitely not a tasting box, but like they're not referencing the beer. That is what I mean.
Cool. Well, we'll keep doing it. I'm sure we'll have Wild on again in the not too far distant future. So yeah, thanks again, Brett. It's been a pleasure. Thanks to Sam off camera. Thanks to Jeff off camera, and thanks to Brad. We're back on the 8th of August is our next one. We're doing the Lockdown Craft Beer Festival. So we're replacing the London Craft Beer Festival, but we've teamed up with them to put together some exciting stuff. So join us then. That'll be Saturday. We think it will start at 4 p.m. and go till 9 p.m. So it's a long one.
Who have we got confirmed? We've got Brick. We've got
Brick. We've got Points. We've got McKellar. We've got Omnipolo. We've got Little Faith, where we're hosting it. And hopefully we're going to be doing a pre-recorded pub crawl of Bermondsey Beer Mile. We'll be brewing with Brick. All kinds of exciting stuff going on.
Wow.
All got to pull that together in 2 weeks, so that's going to be fun, but we'll get it there. Guys, thanks everyone that did a super chat. Do join our Patreon if you can. If you can afford it, obviously, it's rough fucking times right now, so we appreciate and just you guys watching. And yeah, thanks for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll see you guys soon. Thanks, Brett. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, guys.